My goal today is not just to focus on adult learners, but to focus on learners, because I think that the challenge that you face is not only in how to re-engage people who have left you at some point, but also how to continue to engage the generation of students you have today and are coming down the pike. And given the demographic changes of the nation as a whole and the state, it's something I do worry about, because I'm not quite sure that this issue that you're dealing with today at re-engaging adult learners is necessarily going to get any better. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how, number one, how we can re-engage students by reimagining the undergraduate experience. So again, not just talking about how we re-engage students who have already dropped out, but how do we re-engage students to ensure they don't drop out? Second, how do we better align what the world of work needs today to what we're preparing students for, of all kinds and all ages, right? So not just our traditional undergraduates, but our non-traditional undergraduates, because if you want to re-engage them and bring them back, you need to be preparing them for the workforce that is to come, not the workforce that is past. And third, I want to end on some specific tactics that I think are working at other institutions. We've thought about students in one of two ways, right? They're either traditional, 18 to 22, 23-year-olds, or non-traditional, right? Everybody else. Now, you all know the numbers. The non-traditional numbers now are bigger than the traditional numbers. But I think that this is a very old way of thinking about students, because all it does is classify them based on their ages, right? It doesn't classify them based on their needs. It doesn't classify them based on their mindsets, why they want to go to college, what are they trying to get out of it. And even if you look at the numbers, we don't just have two markets of students anymore, right? 40% go exclusively full-time, 7% go exclusively part-time, but you have that big group there on the left-hand side, right? 54% now mix their enrollment in some way, right? They go some full-time, some part-time. So we did this survey of a couple of thousand, a little over 3,000 people who were enrolled in a bachelor's degree program at any age. And we asked them a series of questions to get at that mindset, right? Why are you going to college? And what we found is that rather than just two buckets of traditional and non-traditional, there are actually 6 buckets of students that we found. And I actually think if you think about this on your own campuses, you probably even have more buckets than this. So what we really need to do is to think, even on your own campuses, what are those buckets on your own campuses, and how do you serve them? And let's stop serving them with programs that are aimed at non-traditional students and programs that are aimed at traditional students, but again, focus on why they're there and what they want to get out of, the thing. Because students are not homogeneous, but yet we're serving them in one or two different pathways through higher education. And what I hope to encourage you to do today is to really think about how we rethink the concept of college, of really higher education in general, so that we don't just talk about it in terms of college, which I think to many people means a 4-year degree or a 4-year institution, but we really think about what we need to provide to our citizens after high school. I want to lay out a couple of ideas to discuss further, not only to prevent dropouts, because I think part of this is about prevention, but also how to reconnect with those students who have left you. The first actually comes from a report that many of you may have seen that came out just yesterday from the Community College Research Center and from the work that they do with CESI, the Community College Student Engagement Survey. And what they found was that, and I'm sorry for this graphic, I just pulled it from their report. They found that students who had at least some full-time status at some point were much more engaged in their studies and graduated at higher rates. So that doesn't necessarily mean they were entirely full-time for their entire career, but going back to that mixed enrollment, that at some point, and particularly earlier in their college career, they were full-time. And why is that? Because one of the things that they discovered, and I think this is again goes back to tactics, they found that there are so many services that are available for full-time students that are not available for part-time students, right? Even things like orientation, right? Things that really help students maintain their enrollment, and eventually graduate, they learn when they're full-time students. So that even when they become part-time students, they still have that mindset, they still have those tools. The second idea comes from Georgia State University. They ran a bunch of small experiments, they saw what worked, they started to ramp them up slowly, and eventually they really started to turn the tide. And third, I think that we really need to rethink how education is going to be applied throughout our lifetime. Right? We used to follow the pathway at the bottom there, right? Play, learn, job, retire. And learning would come between the ages of 5 and 25. Well, we now know that learning is really lifelong. This idea that we need to offer them this full course of a degree or of a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or certificate, I think needs to be rethought in terms of how can we break down that credential into its component parts and offer them something that they need today to get that job? There are opportunities in the eye of that hurricane, right, in the calm, to figure out how to better serve, in this case, how to better serve your students. And I think that there are opportunities that we need to not worry about initiative fatigue, because I know there's a lot of initiative fatigue on most campuses, but what are those things, what are those small experiments like at Georgia State that are working on our campuses that we can start to scale up, and in that eye of the hurricane, we can start to have some successes. Well, I'll be around for a couple more minutes. Thank you very much for your time today, and good luck with everything.